Right, thank you. Well, it's nice to be here. Nice to virtually meet everybody. So yes, I am a psychotherapist and I am also a musician. Those are the two main activities in my life. Working with people and making music, working with people therapeutically and making music. So the main area of focus of the talk I want to give today has to do with our thinking mind, our thoughts, and especially how our thinking is linked to our suffering. The main idea of this perspective I want to share is that most of our suffering, and when I say suffering, I'm referring to emotional states of anxiety, sadness, anger, even depression, loneliness, etc. The whole realm of experiences we can call suffering. Most of our suffering doesn't come from what another person does or doesn't do or say to us or doesn't say to us, or from the specific events that are happening in the world, but it comes from the stories we tell ourselves about what the other person did or didn't do, about the events happening in the world. So it comes from what we are thinking and believing, the stories, I'm going to use the word stories a lot, we tell ourselves about reality, not from reality itself. So that's one first main premise of these ideas I want to share today. It's an amazing thing, I think, that we have this faculty that we obviously take for granted most of the time of awareness. Just the fact that we are conscious, aware creatures, that we can stop and say, oh, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that, that we have this ability to be conscious of our own mind, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. We could probably be the only creature, at least on Earth, that has that self-reflective capacity to take a stance back from what we are experiencing and be aware of the fact that we are aware. So with this in mind, for this work I'm going to share, we're going to be very aware of this differentiation between awareness, so our consciousness itself, and what we are aware of. We don't usually make this discernment in our daily life. We usually live our lives totally immersed in our thoughts, in our thinking mind, without having this differentiation between I, the one who is aware, and the thoughts that I'm aware of. Usually it's like these two realms are like one thing. I hope to make this more clear as we go. Another way to refer to this is that we tend to be totally identified with our thoughts. So there's no distance between me and my thinking. Whatever my thoughts are saying, I take to be reality. It means like I'm totally identified with my thoughts. And the same thing could be said for my feelings and my emotions. Usually, when I'm experiencing an emotion, I say something like, I am sad, I am anger. See, I am the emotion. Instead of something like, I am the one who is aware of this feeling called sadness, which sounds like a subtle thing, but it implies a huge difference. It implies a distance between myself as awareness and the thing that I am experiencing, the emotion of sadness, the emotion of the happiness, or the thoughts that are going on in my mind. So back to the topic itself of the title of this talk. the relationship between thinking and suffering. So I mentioned already kind of what it means to be totally identified with my thinking, to have no distance between myself and my thoughts. Another way to say this is that we tend to confuse our thinking with reality. So we don't do this differentiation between reality and my thoughts about reality. We assume that our thoughts about reality are reality. So what does this mean? It means that when we take our thoughts for the truth about whatever, the truth about the other person, the truth about my work, the truth about the future, whenever I take my thoughts to be the truth, I fail to recognize that those thoughts could be just beliefs, just assumptions, just judgments, just stories, which means something very different from assuming them to be the truth. So once we start to have this discernment between thoughts being just beliefs, judgments, assumptions, stories, we can take any thought we're having, especially when it is a thought that is creating distress or suffering. We can take any thought we're having and see it and pause to ask the very simple question, and this can be the most important question of this whole work. Is this true? Is this really, really true? This belief I'm having, this judgment I'm having, this narrative in my mind, this story I'm telling myself about whatever it is it really true? Just being able to stop to ask that question is a huge step to start unraveling the knot of suffering that so often comes from blind belief in our own thinking, in our own assumptions, judgments, beliefs, stories. Now, obviously, not all thinking leads to suffering. There's practical thinking. There's the thinking that happens when I need to plan that I need food, so I need to go to the grocery shop today and take $20 with me to go at 3 o'clock. That's all practical thinking. There's no problem with that kind of rational, practical thinking mind. There's also beautiful thoughts, creative thoughts, or thoughts like, for example, a dear friend pops to mind, and I think, oh, this person is so nice, so dear to me. I love them, and there's a sweet feeling. There's no suffering there, unless another story starts to happen. For example, what if in the future they get mad at me for something and I lose their friendship? That would be so painful. Right there, I'm starting to create suffering with my own stories, with my own thinking. That's just one little example. So if I am experiencing some kind of suffering, stress, disturbance, anxiety, emotional turmoil, whatever, I can always stop and ask myself, what is it that I am thinking and believing that is creating this suffering, this stress, this conflict that I am experiencing? So this means starting to change focus for putting the cause of my troubles outside of myself, to asking, what is it that I am thinking and believing right now that is creating this? For example, what is it that I am thinking and believing about him or her, whomever they are? What is it that I am thinking and believing right now about myself? What is it that I'm thinking and believing about love, about relationships? What is it that I'm thinking about believing about money, about my work, about my boss, about my body, about my future, about my past, anything. What is it that I'm thinking and believing? So yes, this begins to shift the focus of responsibility for how I feel and for how I am experiencing life, from things that occur outside of myself to things that occur in here, in my own head, in my own thinking. And I think this is crucial, because by doing this, I'm no longer declaring myself as a victim of circumstances, but rather, taking charge, taking responsibility, because it's in my head, whatever is making me suffer. So just to give a few examples of common stories, common beliefs that make us human suffer a lot. He or she shouldn't talk to me that way, for example. Am I getting angry because they are talking to me in a certain way, or am I getting angry because I have the belief that they shouldn't talk to me in that way? So I can ask, is that true? Is it true that they shouldn't talk to me that way? Do I really know how the universe should operate? How others should or shouldn't be? Do I really have that? So is it really true that I can tell how anything should or shouldn't be? So the question, is it true there? It's a first important step. I need her to love me, or I need him to love me. Okay, is that true? Be it a partner, a boyfriend, a spouse, a father, a mother, a son, a friend, whomever, I need them to love me. Okay, so maybe when I was 2 months old, I needed my mother to love me in order to survive, but nowadays I need such and such person to love me. Is that true? Do I need that? Is it true? There is something wrong with me. Typical story that can run. Is it, stop and ask, is it true? Life is hard. Life is unfair. Is it true? Is it really true? And when we ask, is it true? The idea is to really take that question to heart, as deep as we can, as sincerely as we can. Can I be absolutely sure that this is true? That there is something wrong with me, that I need such and such person to love me, that they shouldn't act in this way, that whatever the story that's creating conflict is. Such and such person thinks that I am mean. Okay, wait, before I get all reactive, and is it true? That would be mind reading. Whenever we think we know what the other thinks about us, it's a kind of like mind reading we assume to have. So it's always good to stop and say, is this true? Is it true? So to start bringing a little bit of rationality to our thinking mind. So one first crucial step, we've seen it, is to identify whatever it is I'm telling myself in the moment when I'm feeling bad. So identify the story. And if you want, you can write down the step-by-step procedure, which is very practical, that I'm going to be outlining. First step, identify the story that's creating the suffering. Second step, question the story. Is it true? With the is it true question, we insert a little bit of doubt into our assumed certainties about things. And in this sense, doubt is very, very healthy, very important. To doubt that whatever we're telling ourselves is the truth is key. So identify the story, question the story with, is it true? And I'm going to share 2 more procedures in this kind of mental inner surgery process of trying to alleviate a lot of our suffering. Once we are aware of what we're telling ourselves, once we ask, is it true? And maybe come to the conclusion that, okay, I don't know, at least. Maybe I don't come to the conclusion that says, no, it's not true, but at least I introduce doubt. And I say, well, maybe I'm not totally sure that that person hates me, that they should act differently, that, you know, maybe I don't know. When I come to that, I don't know, then there's a third question that is very important. And this is, what happens to me when I believe that that is true, that that story is true? When I believe that I need this person's love in order to be happy? What happens to me when I think it's true, when I believe it? And when I say what happens to me, I invite us to really look at all the dimensions of myself. So what happens to me emotionally? What happens to me emotionally when I think that I need their love to be happy? So I start to take note. Okay, when I believe that thought without questioning it, when I believe it, maybe I become needy, maybe I become controlling, maybe I become fake in order to get them to like me because I think I need their love. Maybe I become anxious when they haven't called me or answered my text in a half hour. Who knows? So that's all that happens to me emotionally. What happens to me when I believe that story? Physically. So what happens in my body? Sometimes when we believe stories that make us suffer, I don't know, we feel heavy, muscles tense up, different areas of the body contract, get tight. So be aware and take notice what happens in my body when I believe this story. So what happens to me emotionally? What happens to me physically? How do I behave? How do I treat the other person when I'm thinking, I'm believing the story that I need their love? I'm just taking that as any random example of a million stories we can tell ourselves about things. How am I in that relationship when I'm thinking, I'm believing this story that I need their love? And take note. And finally, and this process is almost like a meditation, because when I ask myself, okay, who do I become when I believe that? That requires that I become still, aware, that I bring all my attention to this aspect of my life with a careful, focused attention, mindful. So this is not too different from meditation in a way. As far as the kind of attention it asks for. So after I take inventory of the person that I become when I believe the story, I ask one final question, which is, who would I be without this story? How would I feel if I weren't telling myself that I need their love in order to be happy? And this is a little effort of the imagination that's required, because it could be sometimes that we're so used to telling ourselves a story and believing it, that to imagine ourselves without the story takes a little effort of the mind. But so we do this. We try to envision ourselves without this storyline, without this belief, and notice how we would feel. What would happen in our body if we weren't prey to this story? How would I act in relationship to this person if I didn't have the belief that I need their love in order to be happy? And the answers will come to mind. I will start to see myself. Maybe I will be more relaxed in their presence. Maybe I wouldn't feel any need to control them. Maybe I would be more authentic, more myself, if I weren't telling myself that I need their love. Maybe I would even be more loving. So again, to go over this little rundown. First, we identify the story we tell ourselves. Second, we question it. Is it true? Third, we ask ourselves, who do we become when we believe that story? And then we ask ourselves, who would we be if we didn't have that story? And each one of these questions could take you, I don't know, you could do it like this and be free from the suffering that the story was creating, or you can really sit with it and spend 10, 20 minutes in each one of these questions. You know, there's no rule about that. I've spent 2 hours just working with one story, really looking at it, looking at all that it creates inside of me. And or sometimes you can just go, oh, I'm telling myself this, is it true? No, it's just a story. And boom, you're free from it. So it can go either way. Let me just check on time. Am I doing good on time? How long have I spoken for?
Sorry, so you can speak until 10:35. So you're good on time. You can like talk a bit more and elaborate on some of your points.
Good.
If you would like to.
Sure. So I have like 10 more minutes, right? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or 5 or 10? Okay, good. All right. No, that's good. The idea of this work, it's not as sometimes is suggested in some circles, that we need to put our mind in a blank state, to silence our thoughts and our thinking. We're not trying to do that here. We're not trying to silence and quiet the mind, because most of the time that's kind of impossible. If we try to shut our thoughts up and not think, we are creating even more tension, even more of a struggle inside. I mean, the nature of the mind is to pump thoughts, just like the heart pumps blood. You know, that's kind of out of our control. So we're not trying to use force to quiet the mind. We're just trying to question what the mind does. So to question our thoughts with awareness, with love, with intelligence, with patience. The other thing we're not trying to do is to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts. So it's not about taking a thought like, oh, I'm a failure, and then repeating to myself in front of the mirror 20 minutes a day, I'm successful. That's also not what this is about. It's more of a conscious process of self-inquiry, of questioning whatever thoughts we have been thinking and believing that have been creating this stress and suffering. Because what this work suggests, and what I have found, because I have practiced this method for many years, both within myself and also with clients in therapy, is that it is when we question our thinking like this, and with the level of depth that I suggest, when we really look at all the aspects of the thought, the emotions it produces, the manifestations in the body it produces, when we really question in this way, when we start to really liberate ourselves from the power that the thought has to hook us up, to imprison us. The thought, whatever thought it is, whatever story it is, imprisons us only when we believe it, when we believe the thought. Oh, I'm really gonna do so bad in the talk tomorrow because I get nervous and I'm gonna mess it up. When I believe that thought, I start to panic. So I'm a prisoner emotionally of the thought when I believe it. So the key to freedom is to question that prior belief that I had on my thought. Is it true? Do I tend to usually mess up? It's not necessarily true. So what happens to me when I believe that? Oh, I get so anxious. I think I have to do perfectly. I think, okay, and who would I be without that thought? And I really contemplate that. I can feel my muscles relaxing just by imagining myself without the thought. Oh, I can breathe deeper again. I realize that I really know what I'm talking about. There's no reason to panic. So there's the one Alfonso when he believes the frightening thought, and there's another Alfonso when he's free from the frightening thought. So this is about freedom, becoming free from thoughts by using a process of questioning, of self-inquiry. And that's pretty much it. This is a very general introduction. If anyone wants to work with this method more in depth, you can later contact me. I don't know if my information will be shared, and if you want to work more deeply with this kind of method, I'm available to do that via Zoom or however. And there's also a couple of teachers that are very good with this, from which I have learned many of these things, that I can also share their names in case you want to look them up. One is a man called Richard Moss. He's a doctor / spiritual teacher. Well, he was a doctor at some point. And another, it's a woman called Byron Katie. They are both from the US, and they work with this kind of method in case you are interested to inquire deeper into this. So that's it. Thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you.